gentlemen, welcome on the stage, Shashi Tharoor.
Impossible act to follow, Remo. But anyway, I'm Shashi Tharoor, and if you're surprised to see me here doing stand-up comedy, believe me, I feel exactly the same. I have to say that they did tell me the writing life takes you places, but I didn't quite expect this place right now. Anyway, it's amazing to follow Remo onto the stage. I mean, the guy sings in 3 languages and has even sung in Bollywood. As a writer, of course, I mean, my attitude to Bollywood is basically summed up in the tale of the 2 goats at a Bollywood garbage dump. The first goat is chewing ruminatively in celluloid, and he says, you know, this film's not bad. And the second goat says, nah, the book's better. But anyway, isn't it great to be back live here? All those Zoom meetings and virtual sessions without a single glass of wine to lubricate the vocal cords. Right? I mean, they say it takes a village to raise a good writer, but it takes a whole vineyard to run a literary festival. Anyway, once JLF said they were coming back to the British Library, we were all excited. Sanjoy even said his stellar list would set the stage on fire. The poor librarians didn't realize he meant it literally. It was really tough the last couple of years, wasn't it? Especially for stand-up comedians. With the lockdown and the quarantine, all they could tell were inside jokes. Oh. Well, first at the start of the pandemic, you know, people had the virus without realizing they were infected. The symptoms would show up sometimes 14 days later. Remember that? I'd tell you a coronavirus joke right now, but you'd have to wait 2 weeks to see if you caught it. No, but seriously, terrible things happened because of the pandemic, and particularly unemployment everywhere. Comedians tried a few jokes about unemployed people, but none of them work. That's why they called it a pandemic. All right, raise your hands, those of you who actually got COVID. COVID, my gosh. Welcome to the club. Okay, did you know that the full name of COVID-19 is actually COVID-19? It was the novel coronavirus pandemic of 2019. And someone asked, why did they call it the novel coronavirus? Well, because it's a long story. Anyway, we're constantly, as you know, these days being exhorted to keep the company of positive-minded people, avoid negativism in our lives, and so on. Of course, the pandemic era was not the time to be surrounding yourself with positive people. But you know those positive thinking, forward-looking, motivational speakers who ask you to visualize where you'll be, imagine where you'll be 5 years from now? Have you been to courses that tell you to do that? How many of them do you think were saying, boy, we got that right in 2015? The first challenge in India, of course, was social distancing. That was essential. They say when people are in close proximity to each other, they spread the virus more easily. In fact, experts say that the spread of COVID-19 depends on 2 factors. 1, how dense the population is. 2, how dense the population is. And we Indians are pretty dense in both senses of the term. So the doctors were all saying we should avoid human contact, right? Stay away from people. Well, that wasn't too hard for some of our political leaders. They've been staying away from people for years. But jokes apart, social distancing is impossible for a politician. You know, we thrive on crowds, pressing the flesh. You can't win too many votes from 6 feet away. In India, though politics as usual was suspended in the streets, our protests, our dharnas, our satyagrahas all continued online. They took place virtually. Now, this had some positives, right? Because for 2 years, the rioters were also working from home and destroying their own property rather than the public's. Now, fortunately, aside from being a politician, I'm also a writer, which is why I'm here. But it was hard to do any writing during the pandemic. I sneezed in front of my laptop and it started an antivirus scan on its own. And there was no point even checking the weather forecast. Every day the weather was room temperature. Do the Indians here remember when the Prime Minister said we would win the war against the virus in 21 days? Yeah? Okay, so that was lockdown 1. By the time lockdown 4 came along, it was like the movie Dabang. Didn't make any sense, but the sequels kept on coming. Right? Those quarantines were like the Netflix series, you know, when you think when you think it's over, that's when the next season comes along. As one woman told me, I'm not adding 2020 to my age. I didn't even use it. You know, all years have 365 days, except leap years, like 2020, which are 3,650 days. This is the longest that something made in China has ever lasted. Those were tough times with the lockdowns, the masks, everything shut down. In Delhi, with the industries basically closed and the cars off the streets, suddenly the air cleared up magically. And some of us saw the sky and the clouds for the first time in 30 years. But it was just when the air was breathable at last and clear that people had to go around wearing masks. Ah, those masks. Can you recall there used to be a time when people freaked out if you walked into a bank wearing a mask? Now they freak out if you walk into a bank not wearing a mask. Right? Anyway, I mean, all this has led to some pick-win situations. I heard the one about a blonde who became pregnant during the pandemic. And when a friend asked her who the father was, she replied, I don't know, I can't recognize him without his mask. Now, mind you, some people saw some positives in all this. There's an impecunious writer at JLF who rejoiced that when he went to the supermarket, 2 people that he owed money to didn't recognize him. Anyway, people were told to stay at home so the authorities could flatten the curve. But with nothing to do but make periodic trips to the kitchen and the fridge, I can tell you people weren't flattening the curve, they were fattening their curves. And I'm not talking about William Dalrymple, okay? In fact, where is... He's not here, serves him right. But actually, the lockdowns were like gardening. You planted yourself in front of the TV, and a few months later, you've already grown noticeably. So it's great to be back to normal, right? No masks or social distancing. But keep your fingers crossed when you say that, because in India, we believe in reincarnation, even for viruses. Actually, back home, the restaurants that didn't, unfortunately, go bankrupt and close down or whatever are now reopening. But even they've become philosophical. Have you heard about the new restaurant in Rishikesh called Karma? There's no menu. You get what you deserve. But I'm thrilled to be back at JLF in London. Missed it the last couple of years. Here you have an audience. In the quarantine days, you had to talk to yourself or to the walls or to a Zoom camera, right? In fact, I told my suitcases last time there would be no JLF this year, and I had to deal with emotional baggage. So for all those who've come here just for the festival, when the festival is over, will you make the time to visit London? You know, do some proper tourism? I'd recommend the museums, or as we call them in India, the chor bazaars. These museums, the British Museum, oh my God, they're like, why don't you pay us some money looking at what my grandfather stole from your grandfather? It's like someone steals your phone, but instead of living their life in shame or dressing it up with a fake cover, they keep it on display and they charge you to look up your relatives' numbers on it. Yeah, they did steal from us. The UK has so many of India's richest and most valuable assets, the Kohinoor, the Amravati Stupa, Nirav Modi and Vijay Mallya. And we want all of them back. But let's face it, the British literally looted our country. From one of the richest countries in the world, as you heard when William and I were talking, when they came, to one of the poorest when they left. The last time some foreigner had such a detrimental effect on India was when Greg Chappell managed the team in the 2007 World Cup. Now, as a Singaporean comedian, Jinx Yeo, has explained it, you have to understand that if the human race is like the human body, the British are like the large intestine, also known as the colon. That's the part of the body that digests everything you've got and turns it into what you flush down the toilet. So that's what the British did to India. They behaved just like the colon. That's why it's called British colonization. Anyway, when Jingxiu told this joke, somebody got so offended. He said, listen, you took our land, you could at least take a joke. At least the land wasn't given willingly. The joke is, anyway. Anyway, well, the British don't like to admit it. I mean, they really like to recall the imperial era as one of decorous tea parties and overdressed Maharajas. I know you all saw that wonderful 14-year-old British Indian kid who asked me yesterday if colonialism wasn't really a good thing. Now you know that people come to literary festivals to celebrate fiction. Truth is, that is the kind of fiction he's taught. Basically, the British talk about the evils of colonialism, but as often as Narendra Modi mentions Achhe Din these days. Did you folks have to, the Indians here, did you have to get a visa to come? Yeah, have you wondered what it would be like, or what it would have been like if back in the 1700s when they invaded us, we had behaved the way the British immigration people do when you apply for visas? What's the purpose of your visit? Ah, loot and plunder, is it? All right. Please deposit the visa fee there, 45 trillion pounds. Or, how long do you plan to stay? Oh, you don't know? I'm afraid it will take some time to process your application in that case. Come back in 200 years. So some Angrez comes to the Grand Trunk Road and says to a poor Indian, where does this road go? And the Indian replies, the road stays, you go. But the Brits don't listen. They go the whole way. They capture the road and all of India and both sides of it. And so now we're members of the Commonwealth. Typically British name, Commonwealth. They had all the wealth, and we were left to be the commoners. And some of you know I made that Oxford speech about reparations. But frankly, the Brits aren't going to give us a penny. So I say to the Brits here, at this point, all we can do is ask for an apology. Because honestly, there is nothing else you can give us. You gave the railways, we put the people in them. And the Wi-Fi. Now, Wi-Fi on our train, of course, is like the officials who install them. They're there, but they don't actually work. Anyway, you gave us cricket, we made the better team. You gave us the English language, I took it back. You gave us P.G. Woodhouse, and for that we are grateful. You gave us tea, we made it better. Right, masala chai? But that led to a chai wala, so maybe I'm not so sure. All right, and for those of you who didn't laugh, I'll do what I'm still waiting for the Brits to do. I'll apologize. If you didn't like it, react to me the way that Mr. Modi does. You can blame it all on Nehru. As Remo says, ya ya, maya ya. Take care.
Take a photograph.
This one I already have. You're going to give me a different color. Nothing left?
Shashi Tharoor.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. See you next year. And if any of you are passing through Rome on the 17th, we have JLF Rome, our first place marker, and we hope to have a full-fledged festival. After that, Jaipur Literature Festival dates are 19th to the 23rd of January. Those of you coming, book now. Our bookings are open. Remo's going to be signing books, so we'll see you all downstairs. Thank you. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you next year.